Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Just Two Dads with my partner, Mr. Sean Francis. I am Brian Altunian. We are getting close. We're closing in on episode number 200. Today's conversation is going to be with an advocate, not just any old advocate. This our guest today is a powerhouse, just amazing. I'm trying to think if it's a powerhouse, a powerhouse with a ton of fire. You're going to love this conversation. She is on fire. So stay tuned for another episode of Just Two Dads. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Just Two Dads. I'm Brian Altunian, along with Sean Francis. If you're catching us live on Facebook, thanks for joining us. We're close to our 4th season, close to our 200th episode. And glad to have you with us. If you're hearing us on podcast outlets, wherever, or on WSTX AM radio down in the U.S. Virgin Islands, thanks for making us part of your listening day. If you've got any comments, you want to put something in the chat, please do so. Any comments, anything that our guest brings up that you may want to ask a question, please feel free to do so. If you're catching us after the fact on our homepage or on our website at justtwodadspodcast.com, please feel free to leave comments, hit subscribe on the videos. It'd be great to be in communication with you. A little bit of we're going to thank everybody. We'll thank everybody at the end. It's a little bit of a bittersweet week for us. First of all, on a personal note, my daughter is in town on her vacation from living abroad, and so glad to have her with me this week. It always warms the heart. Family, no matter where they are, they're spread out halfway across the world. It's always good to have that personal time. And on a separate note, a little bit of sadness for us. Our partner in the very beginning of this podcast did a lot of technical work, a lot of design work, gave us a lot of the steps we needed to be able to reach as many people as possible. Our good friend from Hawaii, Mr. Sean Hall, we received the sad news yesterday that he passed away at the age of 45. So just reinforcing that life is short. We don't know what the next day is going to offer. Sean always says, tomorrow is a lot of things, but a promise is not one of them. So
that's right.
Hug your loved ones and remember that we're all part of the community. No matter where you stand on a variety of issues, we are part of the same community. So love one another and support each other. So without further ado, again, we'll get into thank you, Billy Footwear and all the folks. Yes, if you want to reach out, thank you, Sean, for putting that up. If you want to reach out to us on email, you can hit us up at wearejust2dads@gmail.com. For those listening, we are just two, spelled out TWO. We are just2dads@gmail.com. Look forward to corresponding with each and every one of you. We've got a bunch of guests coming up in the next few weeks we're excited about, but today is going to be really awesome. So let Sean get into it and introduce her to all of you. Sean Francis, how you doing today, buddy?
Full of a lot of reflection. At the time that we are broadcasting, this is the day after Election Day in the United States. We're not going to talk about that, but that, in addition to the onion that is our conversation here today, I say that because we had people on here that if they have various areas that are their strengths and ways in which they serve the community, there's usually one that stands out. Our guest today is someone that was, we first got connected. We're trying to figure it out, Mieko. It's 6-7 years, something like that. It's been a while. And the way that she advocates is a little more many layered than the average advocate. So with that said, and everything that she does in her story, her journey, and her perseverance is incredible. Welcome to Just Two Dads, Mieko Hester Perez. Welcome, Mieko.
Thank you. Thank you both for having me.
Great to see you.
Pretty excited about Just Two Dads. That's kind of awesome.
Thank you so much. And thank you because, we all need to be seen. We need to be heard. And when somebody kind of validates what you had the nerve to try and do, that means a whole lot. So thank you. So we always say, most people that are heroes don't see themselves as such. So, and I know that you're no different, but here to tell you you're a hero. All heroes have superpowers, and the superpowers come from their origin. Why don't you tell us a bit about that, who you are, where you come from, physically, spiritually, and everything, because all of that plays a role in that line of demarcation, either when you make a choice to join the special needs and caregiving community, or you get your membership by way of a diagnosis of your own or that of a family member. So why don't we start there?
Okay, well, wow, it's kind of a loaded question. Where did you start and how did you start? I can tell you, my son Joey was diagnosed with autism at 18 months, and that was around in the 2000s. And I was a single mom, and the diagnosis was still very new. And just like every other parent, you know, we start with the gluten-free, casein-free diet. We start with a million other options before we go to psychotropic medications. And that was the beginning of a journey that I would have never even imagined.
And Mieko, before we get there, because the journey is fascinating and it leads you to the path where you are, but talk about where you grew up, and you know, sort of your family and your family dynamic as you were growing up. You know, that's
my family dynamic. Well, I have, which is really interesting. No matter which side, I believe I have pastors. You know, we are a very religious, conservative. We have physicians, we have narcotics detectives. My brother's a fireman. At the end of the day, you can't make up the dynamics that I have that really come from not only in the States, but also in the Caribbean. So
is that where you're from, the Caribbean?
So where I'm from is I was born here in the States, and my family, some of my family's in the Caribbean. And I think that I was raised in Newport Beach. So here we go. This is like the Martha's Vineyard of California, right? Yeah. The most conservative area, in which my family in the Caribbean, also very conservative. My family in the States is rather detectives and pastors and preachers, right? So I because of my upbringing, and then also being here, I feel like I was raised by an entire fraternity at Cornell because of my attorneys. So I had a very conservative upbringing, no matter which coast I was on, right? And so because of that, I became very, I like to say, no nonsense. And it didn't start out that way. I really didn't get my voice until at 18 years old, when I started working with an attorney who ended up being my best friend in the entire world.
What kind of work were you doing for that attorney?
So I've been a legal secretary since 1999. So when it had to do with IEPs and meetings and just the whole protocol of being a parent and knowing how to conduct myself in this particular space, I was already years ahead in knowing how to navigate.
Was that because the attorney was a special needs attorney, or
no? That was just
how'd you get that exposure?
Yeah, that was, so at around 18 years old, I started working in Superior Court, and I started working for attorney services while taking courses because I knew I wanted to go to law school. And so when you want to get in a certain industry, you tend to find jobs that are relatable to that industry. So I had years of working with attorney services in which everything just became normal. You know, how to initiate a meeting, how to conduct a meeting, how to research the special education of compositive laws, how to take idea and faith and use it to your advantage. And so I had no idea, probably not until Joey was about, I don't know, in elementary, how valuable those steps and the industry I was in, how impactful it was going to be in my journey. It was almost like someone else knew, but they forgot to tell me.
Yeah. So you're 18, you're working for the courts. So that's before you went to college and then postgraduate. So
not even postgraduate. Let me take you all the way back.
That's what I'm trying to get. Yeah.
So when I was in community college. I had already received my legal secretary certification, and I had to choose between going to law school and taking care of my son on the autism spectrum.
Okay.
And I chose my son. And by that time, I knew that I could never work for anyone ever again. And I opened up my attorney service, in which all of those years of being in the legal industry and being inside the courts, being the secret weapon, going through small claims to civil, to appeals, to you name it. I was just going into these courts and conquering them, or really mastering the protocols. And I became sort of a word of mouth. If you want, someone to come in and put your documentation together, call Mieko. And so I opened up CA Corporate and Attorney Services. And that was really out of not being able to go to law school. Interesting.
Okay. And so how long ago was that you started that?
So I started that in 2000. It became a formal corporation in 2005.
Gotcha. And so people would come to you for whatever legal issues they wanted. They just needed.
Well, not really legal issues. An attorney service, basically, we are the support system in law firms. So if you need a process server, if you need documents filed, if you need documents, pulled out of courts, if you need, the file at the Secretary of State. So this particular area and it's funny because today people are like, oh my God, you do everything. I said, yeah, because, I built an attorney service in which I needed to be ahead of whatever we're doing in the court. And I needed to be able to complete pleadings for the law firms that I was, they would hire me as an independent contractor.
Mieko, would you say that, because I'm hearing this and it seems like a law firm, as a layperson from the outside looking in, you would think that a law firm that is fairly large in size and stature and things of that sort would be self-sufficient and have some of those services for themselves, and that a law firm that is less of those things would be your ideal client. Is that fair?
So some do and some don't. Right? No matter what, you're still going to need a service to do your filings. You're still going to do services to do your due diligence. You're still going to need a service to do your process serving. So every law firm has these particular services. Sometimes they're in-house. There was some times where I was in-house, or sometimes I was pulled in on projects. However, I was at the time, and I think I believe I still am, one of less than maybe 50 attorney services that are still run. We're a boutique that are still run by women.
Okay. Right. And so you're talking about, I guess two things. One, tell us about, what it's like, the difference between 2000 to 2005 before you're incorporated, so to speak. How did that affect the business and the services that you give. But then I want to kind of dive into
back to Joey.
your journey with Joey and
diagnosis. Well, what it did is it gave me a foundation, right? It provided me with protocols that I still use today. The time stamping, the proper ways to initiate any type of notifications because that's what we did. We called them soft serves, where if you filed a motion and opposing counsel would file the motion, we would have to serve both with a courtesy copy of, and so there's so many very useful protocols that I was able to be a part of and still use today. And one of the reasons, why I believe I've been able to really be helpful to families is because I've taken out all of the, I don't know this, and I don't know how to do this, and I don't know how to put an effective letter together, and I'm going through these issues. And so the training that I received during that time, you can't get it today, right? So how it actually changed was as I was more aware of estate planning. I was more aware of partnerships, due diligence. I was more aware of how to effectively file docs on my own and know when and when not to contact an IEP advocate or an attorney. So it provided me with a legal education that most legal secretaries do not get. Most legal secretaries are in the law firm and at their desk. I was both. I was in the law firm and I was in the courthouse.
Interesting. Okay, so fast forward, you've started this agency, and then at what point did Joey come along, and then the diagnosis? When did that happen?
So Joey was born in 1999, okay. And I remember him being diagnosed between 2001, 2000, probably late 2001. And at the time, I had 300 appointments.
Oh my gosh.
And I was working for another attorney service. And I remember one day, my supervisor, who was not married, didn't have any children, didn't understand what I was going through. I didn't understand what I was going through, and I needed to attend all of these appointments.
Jeez.
I remember going to lunch. I had a law firm call me and say, Mieko, you have a good rapport with this particular court. We need about $10,000 worth of work, and you're the only person who can do it.
Wow.
I walked back inside of that attorney service. I quit. And the next day I opened CA Corporate and Attorney Services.
Wow. True entrepreneur.
Yeah. But you have no choice when you're, I believe I didn't have a choice. I was working for someone who did not understand the dynamics that I was dealing with. And that decision solely is the reason why I'm no nonsense today. And if you call me, I will walk you through the entire process of whatever issue you may have.
Yeah. Interesting. And then, so he got the diagnosis. At the time you were a single parent. Yes.
Right. I was a single parent.
Yeah. And so so following the process, people have issues, they come to you. So now you're kind of on the other side, a client. How did you find getting access to resources for what you needed for Joey? Was that easy to find for you back then, or?
And he's got more than one diagnosis that comes into place too. So let's
right. The second diagnosis doesn't come into play until 2011. However,
okay, so let's go to the first one then.
Yeah. The first diagnosis, And you know, when he was diagnosed with autism, and in regards to getting the resources, I'm a legal researcher. And so, and at the time, I mean, I still don't take no I've seen exceptions inside courthouses. I've seen exceptions everywhere. But I was, what you see is how I was in 1999 and 2000. My son was my biggest case and continues to be.
Yeah. So was it easy to find? I guess my question, I know you're a legal
No,
researcher,
it was not.
So
For most parents that I talk to today, still, they cannot find anything.
Still can't find it. Over 20 years later.
Over
right?
20 years later, right?
Yeah.
But I was in a place where I researched until
You're blue
the
in the
wee
face,
hours
right?
of the night.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. And you were able to navigate and kind of get the support you needed, right?
Right.
But
I was able to keep Joey's regional center coordinator from the time he was 5 years old to the time he was 19.
Wow.
And that's impossible these days.
Yeah, for sure. So again, fascinating, and pointing out that, you know, a family that doesn't know initially that there's even anything off with their child, right? Then they go see a doctor, a specialist, a neurologist or something, and then they get a diagnosis, and then all those emotions swirl around, and then they have to go figure out what next. So, you know, the fact that you were doing this 20 some years ago and had the mindset to, you know, to dig in and figure it out, you're already steps ahead of so many families. And then to hear today that 20 years later, we're still finding people struggle to find access to resources. That's just a sad state of affairs in our industry, and hopefully something that we can,
I'm seeing it be very difficult in the Caribbean, more than anything else. I was just in Puerto Rico last month, and where I have some family there that are physicians. I work with quite a few organizations in Puerto Rico as well. And there's still a stigma there. I have a lot of parents who do not want the autism diagnosis is, just unbelievable. Nobody wants it. And it's almost like when I get there and I say, you know what, here's the diagnosis, and they have to go through 13 doctors, and I can see it immediately.
Yeah. Well, culturally, you're dealing with the Caribbean, and then you're also dealing culturally with the Latino community, which is not that much different from what you deal with within the African American community as well, which is just, and from what I understand, from what I understand, the same occurs. I've had parents who are of Middle Eastern descent tell me the same thing, especially from a male's perspective, that there's a certain amount of shame. I want to go back just a second, because you mentioned, and we want to add value in our effort to do so. Joey had the same caseworker from the regional center for an exceptionally long period of time. And you yourself mentioned how that's impossible, unheard of. Is there any way to explain in a nutshell, in as much of a Cliff Notes version as you can, how you went about doing that?
Right. With our children on the autism spectrum, they do not like change. Right?
For sure.
Change presents an awful amount of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able, and I still do this today with families who contact me, I was able to put together such an impressive reason why he should keep his coordinator that they never challenged me.
Tell us what some of those, not what the bullet points are specifically in his case, but in other words, if you're going to put something together to state such a case, maybe you want to state A, B. Maybe it's the rapport between the subject, between your child and the coordinator. Whatever. Tell us some of those things.
Joey was nonverbal.
Get an idea.
Joey was nonverbal, and I realized very early on, every time you switch a coordinator, the coordinator doesn't, it's like going to the doctors, right? Every time I'd go see a doctor, even though if it's a new doctor, they would never read the file before they walked in the room. And I was constantly explaining myself. And I said, no, go back out, read the file, and come back in. Right. And so what I did is I made sure, and I pleaded my case along with my legal counsel, that this particular switching every 6 months or every year of a coordinator was presenting trauma to my son. And so because every case is different, when you contact me, I say, let's go. And I'll listen for 2 to 3 hours and say, okay, this is what the issue is. Because every issue is not only confidential, but it is specific to the family. So I can't give you, what was specific to me was I knew that Joey had issue with change, and the change presented a lot of behaviors, a lot of unwanted behaviors. And you have, and I noticed it even with his teachers. I noticed it with my nanny. I noticed it. So I kept people, Joey used to, we used to call Joey a circle of trust. So I kept that circle of trust together. And that was his coordinator. That was his medical staff. It may have changed after 2011 when he was diagnosed with Duchenne Muscular Dystrophy. But I did my part as a parent to keep people consistently in his life. And one of those happened to be his coordinator, his regional center coordinator.
Gotcha.
And is that an easy thing to do? I'm just gonna.
No, it's very difficult to do.
And so how do you insist on it? How does that happen?
Brian, you missed the part when I said confidential.
Got it. Got it.
But however, now, what I see as a much bigger problem and why it's not the way that it used to be 5 years ago, simply because is the rate of autism in the regional center has shot off the charts, right? And because of that, you have an influx of social workers coming through. Some of them are just tired and want to go. Some of them are there for the long haul. And then some of it is internal within the regional center. So it's hard to keep the right one. However, I had an attorney, Joey had an attorney, and we shared an attorney.
Gotcha. Yeah, so it's not an easy process for families who are listening. They're like, I'm sure they're figuring out how do we do it. But so I guess the question would be, call you.
I think a lot of it starts with people knowing what they're entitled to, because if you have this arsenal of weapons that are sitting in a case with which you can battle this opposition that's coming towards you, and they're right there for the taking. They could be right there for the taking, but if they're hiding behind a cloak and nobody tells you they're right there and you can use them, and that therein lies the problem with the system. Yeah, right.
And knowing when and when not, it's one of those things where even when I have parents come to me, I said, if you're going to come to me with 10 issues, we're only going to focus on the first 3, and then we're going to narrow it down to 2, right? And so for me, having consistent people in Joey's life always remained number 1. Even in a family law setting, it's still number 1. And it's because to me, that's the PTSD with our children. That's the part when Joey would go to school for a couple of weeks. He has a substitute. Hell's going to break loose because of that substitute. Right. And so I started to pay attention to these habits. I started to pay attention. And when he was the most distressed.
Yeah. Which at the end of the day, if we're paying attention to what our children are doing, sometimes that's some of the challenge when parents are juggling jobs and other family members and other things that we're not 100% present in
But
what's
you got
going
to
on.
be prepared who you're talking to, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Sure.
I did it not only by myself, but I also did it with another child. I had my daughter as well. And so
Is she older or younger?
yeah, she's 2 years older than Joey.
Got it.
And I can tell you even today, you know, when I consult with a 2-parent home, I'm always like, okay, first of all, you're your child and you're your child, right? And so, okay, let's remove everything that we see about him in you and the other parent.
Yeah.
Then we can get to the meat of things. And it's a much more joyful conversation when after we start removing. I'm like, you know, Joey was nonverbal, but it doesn't mean that he didn't communicate. I saw the people he loved to be around. He would laugh, he would smile. And when those people left, he couldn't wait to see them again. So, you know, it is a certain part of being in tune with your child. But I could tell you, I really don't know how I did it. Well, I can tell you.
Honest. Sure.
I spent a lot of time leaning on faith.
Okay.
I couldn't attend church anymore. So when people walked into my home, they would go, "You have all these quotes and all these signs, and what are you? Are you Buddhist? Are you Christian? Are you Catholic? What?" And I said, I need all of them.
Yeah.
Because I needed to make my home into the place that gave me the most strength.
Yeah.
My grandparents gave me a foundation. My culture gave me pride. And it gave me strength. And every day, I embraced every challenge. Like, yeah, okay, well, you should have seen what I did yesterday. Like, you know, it's one of those.
And I'm sorry if I spaced mentally, but do we talk about the second diagnosis? I don't think we've.
No, not yet.
Okay, good. Thank
No.
you. I was like, I don't know, I missed that one thing, but apparently.
Yeah. Well, I mean, before we even get to the second diagnosis, you know, so I was already dealing with one with no cure.
Yeah.
Right. 2011, I'm dealing with Duchenne Muscular Dystrophy, which is the fatal muscular dystrophy. And I remember sitting in a room full of physicians crying, and I was in there by myself at the table. And I had 8 doctors tell me how valuable my son was to the autism community. And while they were crying, I said, piece of cake, autism, now Duchenne muscular dystrophy. What do I have, the golden child? What is going on here? I realized early on why Joey was here. And it was much bigger than me. It was much bigger than me. And I started having a different type of gratitude. It was the beginning of my gratitude journey.
Got it.
I was so happy to have been his mother.
Amazing. Amazing. Okay. And clearly not fatal, because here we are 13 years later, and right? Joey's how old is now?
Joey passed away almost 6 years ago.
I did not know that, by the way. So that's news to me. So I'm so sorry to hear that. I did not know that. I did not know that. So it was a fatal diagnosis.
Yeah, he was terminally ill with the diagnosis, and you would have thought that would have broken me, right? Yeah. I realized the gift that he had not only left me with, but the gift that he had given me. And that gift was, And I made a promise to him, and that's the reason why you're speaking to me today. The promise is every family who called me or emailed me, I would pick up my phone. My attorneys, everyone would yell at me, and I continue to this day. If you call me, I will answer. I made a promise to my son that everything that he taught me would be able to empower other families just like us. Is one of the reasons why I continue to go back to the Caribbean, why I continue to do philanthropy work, as soon as I get to Puerto Rico, I have to take my shoes off because I start walking into homes. I am not too big to do the work. So I continue to do that because it's a part of our soul contract.
Fascinating. I didn't realize that. I'm going to like, okay, so where are we today? And I didn't.
Where are we today is the kid passed away in 2018. 19 years old, and he left me with the schedule that I was like, what just happened here? And the minute I was called, it really went into just full circle. I sat and I said, Joey would never leave me unless I had everything. And that day, April 28th, not only was the day that he received his medical marijuana license, but the day he passed away. And I then said, I knew it. I knew it. This kid, I know what my job is now. And since that day, I haven't stopped. Since that day, I do more work inside family law now as a special court advocate. I still continue to go back to the Caribbean and take my shoes off and walk into homes. I still continue to sit on boards that allow for me to speak on behalf of the parents who don't speak English, speak out for the parents who don't know the resources. And I'm okay with being the autism whisperer. I'm okay with being credible in court.
With all the, as much as we've talked, over the years, and as familiar as I am personally with your site, I wasn't aware of the book, which you just had up on the screen. Why don't we tell us about that?
Wow. So maybe for the last 7 months, and this is also, I think, something from Joey. I'm a consultant, and I consult privately on cannabis therapies, and I still operate my attorney service, and I start getting phone calls, and I started noticing even family law firms are calling me saying, we need you to come in here and listen to this and get your perspective. And then I started speaking on behalf of social workers, speaking, with social workers or child protective service cases, adult service cases. And they said, oh my God, not only do you know the composite of special education laws, but you actually know how to prepare families in a way that we've never seen before. So I had a couple of commissioners, they were on my back and they were like, Mieko, what are you doing? Like, how are you going back and forth? If something happens to you, how are we going to be able to help these parents? And so for years, I had been writing notes. And I had one commissioner particularly say, if you don't come back to court without this book, like without this guidebook, do not come back, because we need you. Not only did you help minors counsel, you helped everyone who sat in the courtroom. to understand how to keep the same regional center coordinator.
So the question that we asked before can be found in the book, which is entitled Mastering the Battlefield, Strategize, Advocate, Triumph, the battle plan for special needs parents. And it's available on Amazon as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And it really is. I mean, I've had a couple of people reach out to me and say, oh my God, we look at videos, we look at books, and you get straight to the problem and resolve it effectively. And you've helped us think about things that we didn't think about. The book isn't a book you read. It's a book that you highlight.
It's a guide. It's more of a guide than a book.
Yeah, you read it and go, oh my God. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And I provide you with these websites that I've used. Notably, there's mock letters at the end of the book on, a regular tone, aggressive tone, initiating certain or how to resolve certain issues and discussing hemp in an IEP meeting. Like all I'm doing is saying, let's the common sense apart about where we are today. This is how I can guide you, and you can take a second look and incorporate some of these strategies that Joey taught me.
And this is a recently published book because it was only released in September, just 2 months ago, right?
So the funny thing is, in September, I submitted the manuscript. I'm in Puerto Rico. I have no idea that the book was published. I was there. I was, as always, working and just kind of, I check my emails and I go, oh my God, my book is published. Like it was, and so I didn't really go public with the book until I believe like the
right
last.
Now?
Yeah, right now. You're absolutely correct. Right now. And I didn't, this is going to seem odd, but I didn't do the book with the intent of a lot of media. I did it with the intent of supporting my community, which is the autism community. Right. We are firm believers of this worked for me. We're telling 300 other parents.
Right.
I respect.
Well, that goes back to the hero quotient I mentioned earlier. And it's funny because it's even we look at the podcast in the same way. We want to reach people and everything. And this is for anybody else listening, remember that if what you do, whether it's your story, your service, your perseverance, or all of the above, if it is to add value to others, then not only is there no shame in letting as many people know as possible, there is shame in not letting people know. And that's why, not just in terms of being great, but just adding value. That's why they say that graveyards have more stories, songs, and great things than life itself does, because most people die with the greatness inside of them. And you might not see your story, which is just your path in life, as something great. But you never know. Each of us is of immeasurable value, but we have to make sure that we choose to let other people know what that value is. And there's no shame in that.
Yeah. And I really, my autism family is my real family. Mm-hmm. They've made no judgments. They understand my, I'm understood, and I, even today when parents come to me, it's a boot camp, and I'm like, welcome to the war, welcome to the battlefield, right? We're all about to play battleship, because right now, with so many children being diagnosed, these children are now being numbers within the current system because it's inundated. And so the proper information is not being offered. So like you said, Brian, how do we know what services to get or how to get services? How do we increase our services? That's the next book. The first book is you're in an IEP, let's go. But the second book will be on being able to effectively get services and knowing about estate planning when your child turns 18 and how it helps when you're going through conservatorship, and so these are it's you're not done at 18. There's you have more to go. And so with having this community that is taking care of me, I will always continue to take care of our community.
That's awesome. And it is why we do the podcast, so that we can give people access to folks who are serving the community that may not know that the resource even exists. So we're putting up on the screen your website, MiekoPerez.com. It's MiekoPerez.com, Mieko Perez. And Mieko, so families can still reach out to you. You're taking on clients.
Sure.
Still?
Yeah. And every family who contacts me, every consult is you're gonna, to this day. So my attorney would always give me a hard time. He would say, "Oh, you don't charge anything, and what's up with that?" And I said, "I charge $1, and I'll charge $1 for the rest of my life, just because you're on my back." I value the families who contact me. I know what it feels like to contact a number of organizations and they want a donation first. My donation comes from gratitude, and it comes from being able to be there for them when no one was there for me. I know the things that I learned are invaluable. I know my attorney, Ted Cromwell, I have stories where I would just walk into an IEP meeting and he would say, "Go." And I'd go, "What?" And he goes, "You know how much I've learned from you? How much?" And he allowed for me to truly find my voice. And so, with how I do things these days is if a family contacts me, I will stop everything that I'm doing just to be able to talk to you on and to give you, most of the time, just encouragement. You're not alone.
Yeah. Well, that's half the battle. Your Instagram, I'm going to put up here on the screen as well. So social media, what do you use that for? Is that again, if families want to just follow, what do you provide there? So
my personal Instagram is just what you see. What you see is what you get, right? What am I doing? It's personal. That I don't necessarily have an Instagram for anything else. However, I do answer those direct messages. If you contact me, I allow for parents and for families and caregivers to ask me, like, how soon is it to file a conservatorship? And sometimes with my business, CA Corporate Attorney Services, I have family law firms who will contact me and say, "Hey, we need your help. We have a situation and we would love to get your perspective to come in and help us build a case to support these families." In addition to 16, 17 years old, recommending estate planning and how important it is to get ahead of probate court.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, Mieko. You're obviously much like us. You figure that your profit from your business comes by putting people in purpose beforehand. But you mentioned that you charge $1 for the services itself,
and that dollar will last for the rest of your life. As long as I'm alive, you will be able.
Great. So it's not. So it's a one-time charge of that. Like in our case, We charge nothing for a consultation in the financial services that we provide for the general public and business owners and families, but especially the special needs community. However, one may pay for the product itself, whether it's you're looking at an estate plan, life insurance, whatever have you. And so that's where profit comes in from us eventually, once we put the people and the purpose beforehand. How does the profit come into your business if you're charging the one-time fee of $1 and doing all that you do? Because it's quite an undertaking.
Yeah, it is quite an undertaking. But apparently, there's nothing you can throw at me that I can't catch. Mm-hmm. Joey has prepared me for this one purpose, and I will not compromise. Right. There's some times where I have to tell parents, can I talk to you in a couple of days? What's the initial issue? Oh, if it's this, I can talk to you through email, or we can try to, but you will talk to me. There's I will not.
You're going to be there for them.
I'm going to be there because, again, my attorney never missed one IEP meeting. He also never charged me one dime.
Right.
What he gave me, I have to give back. That is how it works. That's how the universe works. That's how, and so you have law firms who contact me specifically. Of course, they do their billing accordingly. I have social workers who contact me, and depending on whatever the issue is, either you have, again, the law firm, or you have the commissioner who's heard of me and said, I need her in here. And then also you have families who can't afford. And I think when families contact me, whether you can afford it or not, it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. And because you're contacting me because you need some direction.
So that's where it kind of comes in. When families contact you, there's a one-time charge of $1. When you have other entities that contact you, like firms or municipalities and things like that, that's where your profit comes in.
Yeah. Right.
Fantastic.
Since we've been on this podcast, I can tell you my phone has gone off 30 times.
Wow. Now you service.
That's fantastic. And that's an enviable position from a person, from a business standpoint. And at the same time, it's nice to feel that you're adding value to people. That's what everything is about at the end of the day.
But there's always there's a certain way to do it. And that's what I try to instill in parents,
Right.
As soon as your child has an IEP and is a special needs child, guess what? All the information is now confidential. I'm sitting in court where I'm seeing Facebook and social media, and no one knows the protocol in which to share information. And I think that it seems to be, you should not have, all of your handles are, especially in Facebook, are your first and your last name. We know who your child is. And even when you get into these groups, you still take on risk. And I see it every day. And so I try to at least get ahead of parents and tell them it's okay to share. But, under the special education of composite laws, we still have some confidentiality restraints. And so when you contact me, the first thing I do is legally bind the call. And if you go to an advocate that is not doing that, then there's a possibility that your information could be compromised.
Right.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
At that time, Sean.
Yeah, it is. This is the time of the show where we acknowledge that the hour goes by very fast, just as we said it would. And we asked the following question with context: our ability to change the world. And this is what we're all about. When I say we, I'm not referring to simply Brian, and I'm referring to you and most of the people that follow us and listen to or view our show. Our ability to change the world is tied to our ability or our willingness to change ourselves. So with that said, give us at least one example of a thought or a belief that you once believed strongly, but no longer believe to be true?
I thought I was irrelevant.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Very common. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Very,
thought
very common.
I thought that what I provide was not well received. But my phone has not stopped ringing since 2009.
So tell me this, if you will, because you're saying that you thought that what you provided was not well received. So it's not simply as though you had that feeling before providing the service and value. Once you started providing the service and value, you still had that feeling. When did that go away?
I believe it went away the day Joey passed away.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so public, I'm private. You know, I didn't go on Facebook. I didn't announce his passing. Joey and I had a relationship that I can't explain it.
Right.
For years, I thought that I protected him. I had no idea that he protected me. And so I'm known to be very opinionated, as of every woman is. But I didn't think that people would really value how conservative I was raised. I didn't think, you know, and which changed as I realized there was a child like Joey, a mom like me, a father like you and Brian in every city, state, town in America and beyond.
Yep.
I mean, when I'm getting calls from Spain and Brazil, or I got a call from Germany not too long ago, you know, and I said, and the parent in Germany said something. He said, I can't believe I'm talking to you in the United States and we have the same issue.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Universal.
And that's when I realized maybe I am doing something. Maybe I really am. Maybe people do really value what I bring to the table.
That's amazing. It's an incredible conversation. And Mieko, thank you so much for being on here and sharing. And we've given out your website and Instagram if people want to reach you there. And hopefully families will take advantage and you'll be able to shed some light, continue to offer the service that Joey has bestowed upon you. Thank you. This is it was an amazing conversation. And we always say, we're always amazed at how fast an hour flies by when the subject matter is so fascinating. So I appreciate you as we get ready to sort of sign off tonight, this episode. I just, this is a perfect example where empathy and love, so needed every day. Never know what somebody's going through or what their experience is or what they've woken up to this morning, or, a text that says that one of your close friends has recently passed away. You don't know what somebody's going through. So have some empathy, and some grace, and offer other folks grace. And then if you look at the world through the lenses of love, just a much better place. So empathy and love, it's always my sign off. So thank you again. And Sean, I know Sean's got some final words here as well.
Yes. Thank you again for your time and for your example. And just remember, everyone, questions are more powerful than statements. Everybody needs to be seen. Everybody needs to be heard. Everybody needs to be loved. And the idea that questions are more powerful than statements is, I don't think I've said this before, but I've acknowledged it, especially this past week. It's easier said than done, but just as, if not more, worthy, because we're used to our own shoes. To be more childlike and less childish takes work, because what we still do instinctively is judge people based on our own experience. The value of the questions that we ask is just, and the need is now greater than it ever has been before. And we want to again thank Billy Footwear, our one of our community partners. You know, they provide fantastic adaptive footwear for those in need. And Billy's story is amazing. The shoes look great. And if you use the link that's on the screen, which is also going to be in the show notes, you get 15% off your final purchase. And that comes in really handy when they happen to have a sale going on, because that 15% comes in regardless, no matter what. So to any and everyone within the sound of my voice, just know that we love you. And then feel free to, again, visit our website, just2dadspodcast.com. And you can also find there an opportunity to register for our free men's group known as The Den for dads and caregivers. And remember, November is National Family Caregivers Month, which I didn't even know that until recently. Been around for a while. To everyone within the sound of my voice, we love you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mieko, thank you so much. To Cowie and the Hall family in Hawaii, we love you.